Hello and welcome to the ITPro Podcast. I'm Adam Shepherd.
And I'm Jane McCallion.
And today we're talking about women in the tech industry.
Now, before you start looking for the skip button, this isn't an episode on the well-trodden ground of how tech companies need more gender diversity or how we can get more women into the field. Instead, we're going to look at what it's like to actually be a woman in a male-dominated technical team, the challenges that presents, and whether or not the experience changes one's perspective.
Joining us this week to discuss her journey through this process is Ana Gillan, Senior Solutions Engineer at Cloudera. Ana, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
So, Anna, could we start off by asking you a little bit about your role at Cloudera?
So I'm a solutions engineer. I work in the sales team, basically as the technical counterpart to what you might traditionally call a salesperson. So we have account managers and sales engineers that are part of an account team. We, sell software to our customers. So our customers are enterprises from financial services, from insurance, oil and gas, like literally every single industry sector. And yeah, so we sell software to them to enable big data analytics, data science, all these kind of really fun, real time, large scale big data use cases. So it's a fun job.
Sounds quite diverse.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot, but it's wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest.
So these days, it feels like a lot of people assume kind of technical teams and technical organizations have at least some kind of level of gender balance. But when you joined Cloudera, or Hortonworks as it was at the time, you were the first woman in Europe on a technical team. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that was about 7 years ago. Yeah.
So at what point did you realize you were breaking new ground in that area?
Well, I don't know, probably the first day I walked into the office. Didn't see anybody else who looks like me at the time. I don't think I necessarily realized how pioneering maybe that was, but I definitely saw something was up. But I think, when you start to hear something like that, in like 2014, I was the first technical woman, in Europe. It sounds really bad, but when you put it into perspective, I was employee number 27 in Europe in a company basically that had existed globally for 3 years at that point. So if you think about it, and within that 27, there were maybe like 15 technical people. So, I was the 15th technical person, and I was one of the women. So, it doesn't sound that bad. And I think, sometimes when you look at the stage of a company, somebody has to be the first one. But I was definitely not the last one by any means. I think once I joined, pretty rapidly, we started getting more and more women into the company. And I think now, it's a great place to work for all genders.
So, what were your first few weeks on the team like? Because for me, that sounds like it could be quite intimidating. I mean, I'm quite used to walking to a room and being the only woman there, but my team has always been fairly 50-50 men and women. And yeah, it must have been, was it strange to be just like the only woman there, or do you feel like you settled in and it was just not really a thing fairly quickly?
Do you know what? I think I was pretty lucky that, people didn't make it a thing. I think sometimes, if other people make you feel weird, you start feeling weird, but nobody ever called it out, really. I was just one member of the team, and I was a member of this really hardcore techie team with a bunch of like slightly weird dudes who were, I was just one of them. So I think that was great. I had some really great allies who really respected me technically, who respected, the progress that I'd made to come into that company. And really, we didn't have time for any of that kind of political or kind of odd relationships or anything, because we just really had to start doing the work, and there was we just had to get on with it. So I think I was really lucky. I'm sure that a lot of women are not that lucky. I'm sure a lot of women are made to feel very strange, but it just shows how important it is when you have a team who are allies or who don't notice that there's anything different about this situation, that it makes you feel welcome. It makes you feel, settled really, really quickly.
Yeah. I mean, you say about like kind of the increasing numbers of women have joined
Mm.
your team, and that you were only employee number 15 in Europe. I always wonder this, like, are they younger women? Is this a pipeline problem, as is quite often the case, that it's that the female tech talent hasn't actually been built up yet and then they come into the workplace? Or is it just you're a small team, you attracted more people, some of them were women?
Um, it's kind of both. I think, you know, the pipeline of women is growing, coming out of universities. I think, there's plenty of statistics on, more and more women entering into technology, more and more women adopting technology in later career as well.
Mm.
I think all of these boot camps and all that kind of stuff has been a boon for women who want to make a career change a little bit into it. I mean, to be honest, I also made a career change, aged 24, fine, but it was not my initial career. But what I'm trying to say is that there are actually plenty of women already working in tech. I think one of the problems is trying to make experienced women who have found a niche, who have found a good place in a company, uh, trying to make those women change companies and join your team is the difficult one. I think, to be honest, I'm the same, right? I know that I am well respected. I know that I've built up my reputation in the company that I work at. I know that I make an impact. I know that my colleagues, respect me, want to work with me. This is a good place. Kind of, why would I change? And I think a
Mm.
lot of women who have made a success of their career in one particular company feel exactly the same. I think this is the biggest challenge: is not attracting new talent. It's actually getting experienced non-male talent into your company from another one. So
Mm.
it's a big problem, I think. But at the same time, I don't think it's maybe as bad as we think. Just in the sense that if you create an atmosphere where women want to stay, you kind of get the pipeline starts joining, and things start building up over time.
So, Anna, on that point about building yourself up a reputation within, within a specific company, did you feel that there was a greater kind of weight of expectation on you, if you like, during your first kind of weeks and months at Hortonworks, now Cloudera, because you were the first kind of woman on a technical team?
Again, if there was, I probably didn't notice it. I think it's possibly that I was oblivious. And honestly, maybe that's kind of an important lesson. Don't let it get you down. But I don't think anybody made me feel like that. There was a weight of expectation in that, we were a very small team and we had to get stuff done. So for any employee, really, there was a lot of pressure to perform, and that's what you get in a small company, in kind of a startup time, especially in a
Mm.
Silicon Valley style company. There's just pressure for everybody to perform. So if you have confidence issues in yourself, and also if you are made to feel unusual, that's added pressure. So it can be, especially for women, where the imposter syndrome is possibly more marked than in
Mhm.
equivalent male employees. That's just added pressure on yourself.
Mm.
So I don't think I don't like I say I don't think I noticed it. But indeed, and actually, to be honest, I think I was making more of a big deal of being the only woman. I was kind of telling everybody, like, guys, this is ridiculous. You need to hire more women. I think I was banging on about it for like 4 or 5 months. And I do continuously, to be honest. I still do.
Mm.
So I don't know, maybe
It
I
makes
made more of a big deal.
it makes me wonder if for women who are looking to get into tech, or who already work in tech, if entering a sort of startup workplace is perhaps easier because you all just have to get on with it than than a more established company where you are an incomer into an area where people are already established in from top to bottom, I guess.
So I think that there can be advantages and disadvantages of this startup environment. I think sometimes the startup environment is actually detrimental to gender diversity in the sense that, especially the Silicon Valley style startup, where they what are their benefits, like a pool table, foosball, free beer in the office, you get free food, all this kind of stuff that tends to attract kind of young bachelor men, and these are not benefits that are interesting to young women, maybe some young women, definitely not interesting to women with children, actually perhaps detrimental to women with children. It kind of makes this sort of bro atmosphere, tech bro atmosphere, which
Mm.
actually excludes a diverse talent.
Mhm.
So, it really is dependent on the atmosphere of the startup and how they design their culture. And that's where it's so important in a startup to design your culture with intention to make sure that it is inclusive. So, in terms of the benefits and the way you describe the company culture, you need to make sure that women will not self select out.
Mhm.
If I would look at a company that goes, listen, we have a pool table and free beer in the office, I'll be like, this will be an impossible place to work. I will hate everyone. Right. So, and I wouldn't apply. And therefore they will be losing out on, an experienced talent. Similarly, with a very established company, if also they haven't designed their culture intentionally to promote inclusivity, women won't apply and they won't feel welcome. But an established company might already have structures in place. They might already have a fairly balanced workforce if they've done it right. So women might feel more welcome, that they won't be kind of forced to work 24/7, needing to go on massive nights out in order to be friends with the boss. It's it's all about culture. It doesn't matter the size of the company.
So, on that note, Anna, what was it that attracted you to Hortonworks?
Well, interesting one here, right? I didn't intend on applying. um, so I had actually, I was in the middle of my master's degree in data science and analytics at Royal Holloway, and I was really busy writing my thesis. And I think my dad was like, you should put your CV out because you don't know how long it's going to take to get a job. Day one, my phone was ringing off the hook. I think, at that time, and I was like, Father, I need to study. So I think I was lucky that the skills that I had been learning were super in demand. Not exactly lucky. I think I picked it on purpose. So anyway, I was just going through random job boards. I think I had my idea of being a data scientist, going into the business side, being that sort of a person. And I came across this job, which I didn't know the company because it was, an external recruiter. And it said, skills required, French, German, and Hadoop. And I was like, well, that is me. And I just went, yeah, whatever. So I applied to it. Literally, this recruiter called me in about 0.2 seconds and, kind of explained to me, I need to interview for this role. And I was like, I don't really want to do tech support. Like, I was thinking of being like this data scientist, like all cool, like doing, graphs or whatever. And basically they had to like sell it to me, which was an interesting interview process where I wasn't selling myself, they were selling the company to me. So that was actually quite fun and interesting and quite empowering, I think, as well. But I think, the way that they made a serious effort to try and convince me to join the company, talked to me. One of the guys, I remember the interview was, he just looked at my CV and was like, look, this is really impressive. And he was like, I know you might not want to do support, but this is a good thing to do for a bit, and you can always go back to whatever you want to do afterwards. And I think that personalized approach, the approach of like really wanting me as a coworker, as an employee, I think that just made me feel like it would be a good place to work. And yeah, I just think it was the right time to join a company like that. It was the right time to start on this big data journey. 2014 was pretty, kind of the height of that, of the hype cycle. And
Mm.
yeah, so in the end, in the end, I was won over, but in the beginning, I did not think about joining them at all.
That's really interesting. I think that idea of having to sell yourself as an organization, particularly at that kind of startup
Mm,
stage, is very important because you mentioned about the kind of Silicon Valley tech bro kind of culture. When you look at the companies that are most frequently associated with that, the likes of Uber, for example, in the early days before current CEO Dara took over, it's it's always the companies that are seen as the really attractive places to work, where they don't have to do that kind of element of selling themselves and trying to attract candidates, where they're beating applicants off with a stick.
mhm.
I think it's very easy for that kind of quite insular culture to develop
Yes.
in those kind of environments.
Completely, yeah, and that's how you get um, just a very samey set of employees, and that's where the lack of diversity comes in. It's like from that kind of low effort recruitment. Um, if you actually want if you genuinely want a diverse workforce, you have to go out and get it and make an intentional effort. Make sure that your recruitment pool is diverse in the first place. If it isn't by default, in those companies which are, sought after, go out and find people. Um, you know, if your recruitment pool is all the same, yeah, then your workforce is going to be all the same. So, companies really have to make a serious effort to promote this. It's not going to happen by accident.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's interesting, kind of coming back to something that you said earlier about, kind of you mentioning that perhaps there should be some more women in
Mm.
your team. That, kind of one of the arguments for diversity is that it leads to more creative and adaptable teams, more like, a diversity of thinking. You notice problems earlier, that kind of thing. Is
Mhm.
that something that you have observed at all, do you
Oh yeah,
think?
yeah, completely. I think that me coming from a slightly unusual background, I studied French and German at my undergraduate, and I worked at a couple slightly, not random companies, but I worked at non-high tech roles. Then going into this data science master's degree, I came in with a very, very different background from the rest of my colleagues. The rest of my colleagues were, you know, hardened Linux people, um, they had long enterprise experience from enterprise sales, and their approach was fine, but I think it's once I came in, I started noticing maybe better ways that we should present our work. I have a literature background.
Hmm.
I know how to write. I know how to present things in a nice consumable way. One of my favorite things to kind of yell around is like, do these people not have eyes? Because I'd be looking at some documents we'd be giving to customers, and oh my god, the formatting and just the writing. I'm like, you can't write this. This is not customer facing. This looks
Mm.
awful. So I made kind of a real effort to try and change the way that we presented ourselves to our customers. I even noticed things around accessibility on our website that hadn't been noticed before, because I have friends who are web developers and specialize in accessibility, right? So I've been
Mm.
exposed to different stuff from what my colleagues had been, and I think I started noticing different things, and I think that's been the defining characteristic of me in my career so far, is that that diversity of thinking. And I think we just need more and more and more. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we grow, getting different kinds of talent, different kinds of approaches. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the future with that.
Mm. There's a tweet that's gone round recently on that subject about kind of design choices that very clearly did not have women involved.
Yes.
And it's a you may have seen it. It's a corridor section with a glass floor and a glass ceiling, which has a fairly obvious design flaw.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly the what the everyday sexism movement was. It was noticing things like this that actually proved that women are not involved in the design of our planet. I think there was, shout out to another podcast, 99% Invisible. That was there was an episode where he invited the founder of the everyday sexism movement to talk about that, because it is, 99% Visible is about design choices, things like that. So it was around, the design of cars, the design of, things like that, like glass floors and glass ceilings, literal glass ceilings, where, it's just like, did anyone at any point ask a person who was not a white dude what they thought of this design, and
Exactly.
About 5'10", yeah.
Almost certainly wearing some kind of gilet.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's just, that's exactly the kind of stuff where you kind of just think about how easy it is. I think, when was it? 2 years ago, I went to the Women in Technology World Series conference in Amsterdam. And we're actually, like, one of the keynote speakers was talking about this. And she said, really basic stuff like the magnets in AirPods mean that you can't wear hoop earrings,
Oh my God.
And it's stuff that you just don't even think about. But it's just
that would never have crossed my mind.
Of course not. But the first time a woman, tries to wear hoop earrings with AirPods, she's gonna flip out, right? So, it's all this kind of stuff where it just shows how important it is and how actually detrimental to business it is if you do not have a diverse set of people involved in the design and the planning and in the execution of something. Because, now people aren't going to buy this thing. 50% of the population are not going to buy this thing. And I think that there's loads of statistics around, okay, we're not talking about tech now, but like in terms of, retail and stuff, women buy things more than men buy things. And so now you're literally letting go of, this huge part of your sales that, shouldn't be, that was so easy not to happen.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, kind of this all makes me think of another tweet as well, when you were saying that you're, friends with sort of website designers and that kind of thing. It's like, you come across websites, it's like, we've decided our entire color scheme is blue and yellow or red and green. Like, congratulations. Now people who have colorblind lists can't, this is not very user friendly at all. So yeah, it's just, and I'm personally glad that, from a gender perspective, from, disability accessibility point of view, that like this is something that's becoming sort of more and more prominent just in everyday life, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really exciting. The things are changing for the better. But at the same time, it's very frustrating when you're in it, that this is still a revelation. Like, actually a friend of mine just went through an interview process, one of these web developers, and the hiring manager was just so interested in her specialism in accessibility. And she came back and she was like, do you know what, why is that such a thing? Like, surely it's fundamental. And we were discussing in our group chat, we were like, yeah. Indeed. These things still feel revolutionary when, to those of us who've woken up to the benefits of it, It just seems so obvious and fundamental to us, and it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating to still be pioneering things in 2021. And I think sometimes that's where, when you are a diverse person, be it a woman or somebody from a diverse background, when you're entering into this space, it can feel very daunting and intimidating to be a pioneer.
Mm.
Even for me, I've sort of got over that by now, and I've come to terms with the fact that it is kind of my responsibility still, that I need to pioneer and that I need to represent other women. But not everyone is brave. No, we shouldn't make everybody be brave. Sometimes you just want to enter into a team and feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Why do you have to break through ceilings and boundaries all the time? So there is a responsibility for some of us to be a spearhead, and some of us have that courage. But I think our responsibility as well is to create a comfortable place for other women. We shouldn't be demanding that they also break boundaries all the time. So someone has to be the first, but they must not be the last.
Yes, dismantle rather than break through would be nice. Gets tiring.
Yes, no, it does. It is exhausting. Yeah.
So Anna, what advice would you give to somebody in the same position as you were when you first started out, joining an entirely male team as a woman?
So I think that there's a few things that I've been thinking about recently on that front. You have to believe in yourself, which, again, it sounds so cliche, but you've been hired into this role, so you're good enough for it. So believe in yourself in that respect. And I think that's the first point. I think that's one of the reasons to my success. You were asking me earlier, like, is there did anyone make you feel weird about it? And it's like, if they did, I didn't notice, so fine. So that's that one. Believe in yourself. I think the other one is to maintain your authenticity. Again, that's such a cliche, but you have to talk the way that you talk. You have to be passionate about things you're passionate about. You have to admit when you're confused, because other people are likely confused too, and they are always willing to help. And that's how you kind of build good relationships, which help you establish yourself in the organization. Just being yourself. It has to be that. Don't try and fit in with the guys, if you don't naturally, and they should try and fit in with you as well. And then I think one of the biggest ones that I think has worked really well for me is to try and find your niche as soon as possible. And that niche is not being the girl in the team. Find maybe a product that you can specialize in that others aren't specializing in. Find maybe a process that you can know and own, because that's how you develop, really, I guess, the respect of your colleagues. It's really worked well for me, kind of by accident, as with many things. And you may not realize that is what you're doing. Find whatever your expertise might be, and sort of roll with that. And that's where you'll start to feel comfortable, because you're not going to be competing with anybody. You can be yourself. You can be passionate about it, and it's okay if you don't know everything, because nobody else knows anything. So I think those are the three kind of biggest bits of advice that I can give from my experience anyway.
Well, sadly, I'm afraid that's all we're going to have time for in this week's episode, but our thanks once again to Cloudera's Ana Gillan for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You can find links to everything that we've spoken about in the podcast notes, and even more on our website, www.itpro.co.uk. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can also see more on our new YouTube channel. We'll be back next week with more from the world of IT. Until then, goodbye.
Bye. The ITPro Podcast is brought to you by the Dennis Podcast Network.